Ahsoka Episode 4 is out, it's been out, and honestly, it is a game changer for this series and maybe for the franchise as a whole. Now, I don't think that this series alone, that Dave Filoni alone, that Ahsoka as a character alone, that this episode alone is going to be enough to save the franchise, especially after the disaster that was the sequel trilogy. I don't know if you'll ever get all of the Star Wars fans back on board after how much of a total mess that was. Especially as long as Kathleen Kennedy is still the head of Lucasfilm, I just don't know if you're ever going to get a certain part of the fan base to come back because the sequels were that bad and Kathleen Kennedy is just so divisive and toxic. But this was a game changer for this series, I believe. I think that after this episode, a lot of people that were criticizing this show are going to have egg on their face. And even if you don't like Disney Star Wars, and I don't like Disney Star Wars in general, I'm trying to judge this series for what it is, which is it's a sequel to Rebels. It's a continuation of the story that began with Ahsoka and the Clone Wars. And you know, it's for people that watch that stuff, this series is very, very good. And I'm taking it for what it is, and I'm enjoying it. I understand that, you know, Disney Star Wars still has a crap ton of problems, trust me. I understand that completely. But this show in and of itself is good, and I'm enjoying it for what it is. And I think after this episode, I think a lot of people that have been criticizing this show for, and again, some of the criticism is fair, some of the criticism is reasonable, but some of it is just absolutely ridiculous. And the people that are clinging on to those ridiculous criticisms in particular, I think will have egg on their face after how good this episode is. It's been received very, very positively. It was even trending #1 for a while after it came out. So I'm not going to take too long with the non-spoiler section of this review because I do have a lot I want to get off my chest, both positive in relation to the episode itself and negative in regards to what I consider to be some very hypocritical, quote-unquote, fans of Star Wars and how they've treated this series and how they have treated Dave Filoni and why I think they are being very illogical. And also I want to talk about a disturbing trend that I see emerging from some corners of the fandom. But first, I do want to issue an apology. I know that some people didn't like the thumbnail I used for my reaction to the ending of Ahsoka Episode 4. Yes, it did contain a major spoiler, and to be fair, I did start out with the video uploaded for the first couple of hours with a more ambiguous title and thumbnail. But what you have to understand is that the night that Ahsoka Episode 4 premiered, it was trending at #1 on social media for a while, and the big spoiler that we get at the end of that episode was trending as well. So the spoiler was already out there. Very few people were making any attempt to hide it. So I just threw up my hands and said, okay, what the hell? If no one else is going to bother trying to hide the reveal, why should I? It made no sense. And unfortunately, that is just the nature of the internet. When something like this goes viral, and it did go viral for sure, there really isn't much you can do to avoid spoilers for long. So this is why you need to just go ahead and watch the episode or stay offline until you can watch the episode. I know that that sounds harsh, but that's just how these things work. I remember when The Last Jedi came out, I didn't get online for like 12 hours or something until I actually saw the movie myself, because I know how the internet works. I apologize if you were spoiled, but that's just how these things go. Hell, the thumbnail for this review will also probably be a spoiler as well. I'm sorry. I also want to apologize for this review coming out a little bit later than I had hoped. You're probably seeing this review either Saturday or Sunday. Do apologize for that, but I had some things I had to take care of IRL, super busy. It is what it is, but we are here for the review now. So Ahsoka Episode 4, Fallen Jedi is an absolutely excellent episode. The best of the series so far. Honestly, some of the best Star Wars content we've gotten in a very long time. It goes without saying you should have seen the episode by now, but if you haven't, I mean, what the fuck? Go see it. Alright, now we move into the quote-unquote spoiler section of the review. This is a very action-heavy episode. Once again, just like the previous one, except instead of spaceship battles, we get lightsaber duels. The first one being Ahsoka and Sabine versus Shin and Marok. I think I pronounced his name right this time, but it doesn't matter anyways, because you can throw out all of your Star Killer theories and Ezra theories. Marok, it turns out, is just Marok, which is what I thought originally, but the distorted voice that we got in the last episode actually had me believing he may have been important, but nah, it just seems like he was just some bewitched tool of Morgan Elsbeth that she was controlling using Night Sister magic. And Honestly, I'm fine with that. Not every character has to be somebody else or even somebody uber important. When you start to do stuff like that and you make too many connections like that, it can make the universe feel very small. So I'm good with this. I'm fine with this. I didn't think that Marok was anyone important in the first place, so I never got my hopes up that he was. Now, do I think that Starkiller is going to eventually be canon? Do I think we're eventually going to get a Starkiller versus Ahsoka battle? Yes, because Dave Filoni said that he wants to have Starkiller, the apprentice of Vader, fight against Ahsoka, the apprentice of Anakin. He said that he wants that to happen, so I think at some point, I don't know if it's going to be here in this series or if it's going to be in the Dave Filoni movie, but I think at some point we are going to get that fight. That being said, Marok goes out in a cool fight. The stances he and Ahsoka were doing, the way they fought, it clearly had a lot of samurai influences. I loved it. Very good fight. Sabine versus Shin Hati. This was another excellent fight. Yes, the lightsaber action was cool here as well, but what I really love was how Sabine mixed her lightsaber skills with her skills as a Mandalorian, with the Mandalorian side being actually more prominent here. There is a moment, which we saw in the trailer, where Shin has Sabine on the ground about to take her out, and she tells Sabine that she has no power, no connection to the Force, and it looks like Sabine is about to force push Hati. And if this was Rey Skywalker, I'm sure she would have pulled a Force ability out of her ass. But no, she finds a clever workaround, which is she knocks out Shin with Mandalorian tech. And everybody in the fandom complaining about this show being led by a bunch of Mary Sues or girl bosses or whatever, I don't get how anyone can criticize or compare the female characters in this show to someone like Rey Skywalker. We know that Shin has been training under Baylan for at least a decent amount of time. We know that Ahsoka has had decades of development as both a Jedi during the Clone Wars and as whatever she would consider herself to be now. So her power is clearly justified. I don't think that even really needs to be said. And then we have Sabine, who is struggling here. She isn't this uber powerful out of nowhere and for no reason prodigy like Rey. She actually has a training arc going on here when it comes to the Force. But what she is good at is Mandalorian combat, because she's a Mandalorian and she uses that to her advantage, and I thought that was cool. We finally have some well-written female characters with either well-established explanations for their power in the case of Ahsoka and Shin, or in the case of Sabine, she's currently undergoing training, and yet people are still complaining, and you really have to wonder why. Here's the thing, when I criticize Rey, it is because she is not a well-written character and had a lot of power and ability that didn't make sense until they pulled out the Rey Palpatine connection, bloodline, whatever, which wasn't even the original intent behind her backstory. So she was just uber powerful for no good reason. It's one of the reasons why when Kylo said, "You're nobody" in episode 8, I was like, what the hell? How did a nobody defeat Kylo Ren, the grandson of the Chosen One, a student of Luke Skywalker? How does that happen? It didn't make sense. Shin, on the other hand, has a reason for why she's strong. Ahsoka has 3 freaking shows worth, including this one, plus a damn movie explaining how she got so strong. And Sabine is actually struggling in training, and when she does win, it's done in a clever way involving her Mandalorian heritage. My problem with Rey was never the fact that she was a female protagonist, and I resented, and I still do resent Disney for calling anyone who questions the writing surrounding that character a sexist, but when we have very well written and well explained powerful women as we do in Ahsoka, when the writing is well done and yet people still complain about the quote unquote girl bosses and Mary Sues, it does make me take a step back and ask the question, is there actual legit sexism at play here? Now, I'm not calling out anyone in particular yet, but some of the trends that I'm seeing from certain corners of the fandom are really disturbing and honestly creepy. See, that's the thing about actual sexist and actual racist, for that matter. They are very, very creepy. They just give off this weird vibe, and I've been feeling that vibe from certain critics of this show lately, and I don't say that lightly. I don't want to be like Disney, who just calls out anyone who criticizes what I like as a sexist or a racist. I'm not going to do that. I understand that there are some legitimate criticisms of this show. I get that. but complaining about there being powerful women, even though the writing justifies why they are so powerful, or in the case of Sabine, not powerful. I mean, what else am I supposed to take from that other than critics really do just have an issue with female main characters because they're female? I just don't see the legitimate criticism here of Ahsoka, of Sabine, of Hera, of Shin. And I understand maybe some of the acting, you know, I get that maybe a little bit stale or a little bit emotionless, but in terms of like their abilities and what they're doing in the show and their powers or the lack thereof in the case of Sabine, criticizing that, why? It's well written, it's well established as to why they are so powerful, as to why they can do what they can do. And again, it just comes off as people just having an issue with female main characters, not because they're not well written, but because they are female, and that is just very, very disturbing to me. Anyways, I'll leave this particular point alone for now, but honestly, this may require its own discussion video in the future. So let's move on to something a little more lighthearted, and that is Huyang, and how it was a missed opportunity that he didn't use a lightsaber. As a Jedi Temple droid, this dude should have went all General Grievous in this fight. I love Huyang, but not letting him use a lightsaber, I thought this was a big missed opportunity, if I'm being honest. It's one of the few criticisms that I would actually give about this episode. Most of the episode was great, however. Now, what was not a missed opportunity was casting Ray Stevenson as Baylan Skoll. Rest in peace. Baylan is quickly becoming one of the best villains that we've had in this franchise in a very long time. He talks about how between the Jedi, the Sith, all the wars and fighting that has happened, that the best thing for the galaxy is to just wipe the slate clean and start over, but to create, one must first destroy, and that is the reason he is looking for Thrawn. He believes that Thrawn is the man to reset the chessboard, as it were. And to be honest with you, he's not exactly wrong. The galaxy has been so screwed up from not only centuries but millennia of war, and I can see how he would come to believe that it is best to give the galaxy a reset. Now, even though I understand his logic, it's still an extremist view that is going to cause a lot of death and destruction, and obviously I can't go along with that. But Baylan reminds me a lot of another Star Wars character, that being Count Dooku. Now, this is going to be a controversial take, but honestly, I have always preferred Count Dooku over Darth Maul when it comes to Star Wars villains, when it comes to prequel villains in particular. Count Dooku, in my opinion, is a much more layered and interesting villain than what the films might let on. If you read the novels, or hell, just check out his story in Tales of the Jedi on Disney+, Dooku's ideas and his original intentions were not wrong, and he was honestly justified in leaving the Jedi Order. Dooku saw the corruption in both the Order and the Senate and believed that the Republic was beyond saving, and he was ultimately right about that. Yes, the Sith did accelerate things, but that's really all the Sith did, is that they accelerated things. The Republic was going to collapse no matter what. It was just so corrupt and rotten to the core that it had to collapse. The problem with Dooku is that he got wound up with Sidious, and as soon as he became a Sith, that's when Dooku started the path to being a justified political idealist to becoming a villain. Still though, you can agree with Dooku's initial ideology without accepting the tyrant that he became and the methods that he used as a Sith. Now, I feel the same is probably true of Baylan, and I'm looking forward to discovering more about his past as a Jedi and the events that led him to becoming what he is now. There is some indication here that he has negative feelings towards Anakin, and by extension Ahsoka, that he feels that they were responsible, specifically that Anakin was responsible for the collapse of the Jedi Order and the fall of the Republic. And again, he's not really wrong about that, so I'm really interested to see the dynamic between him and Ahsoka as things go forward, and maybe, who knows, we'll find out more about his and Anakin's relationship in the next episode. And as I predicted in the last episode review, we did indeed get the fight between Ahsoka and Baylan from the trailer in this episode. And not only was it a great fight, seriously, this was one of the best fights that Star Wars has had in a while, but when you add the added tension of the map to the other galaxy, transmitting the coordinates of the Eye of Sion, while Ahsoka is fighting Baylan, and she is attempting to destroy the map to prevent Morgan Elsbeth from getting to Thrawn, that extra layer right there, that extra goal in the fight, it makes it even more intense, and it really raises the tension. I was on the edge of my seat watching this fight. I really enjoyed it. Ahsoka, however, does shockingly lose and is tossed over a cliff. Now, earlier in the episode, Ahsoka suggested the idea of destroying the map to the other galaxy to prevent the return of Thrawn, even if it means they may lose their only chance to find Ezra, something which Sabine was clearly not happy about, and because of that, I saw her betrayal coming from a mile away. Yes, Sabine does join Baylan and lets him have the map so that she can find Ezra. Was I pissed and angry that she did this? Of course I was. But does it make sense for the character that she did this? Yes, it does. The Ghost Crew are a family, and she is choosing family over duty. Family makes us do irrational things, so even though this choice is irrational, the writing still makes sense, and it makes sense that she would choose Ezra over the galaxy. I mean, it is what it is. That's the type of character that Sabine is. So yeah, does it piss me off that she did this? Of course it does. But it pisses me off because I know it's going against the greater good. But does it make sense for the character? Absolutely, it makes sense. And with that being said, they're off. Morgan, Baylan, Shin, and Sabine are on their way to a new galaxy, leaving behind Ahsoka and Hera, which does make you wonder how they're going to get to the new galaxy. With the Eye of Sion gone, how are they going to get there? My guess is it's probably going to involve the space whales. And I did like that we did see Hera and some of her allies who decided to assist Ahsoka and Sabine, even without the approval of the Senate. I thought that was cool. I thought that was great. And I'm not going to lie, I was happy to see Jason Syndulla, happy to see more of him in this episode. But I do have to question Hera bringing her son into a battlefield. If there was anything that I would critique this episode about, it would be that particular point. Again, the Hu Yang fight, I wanted to see him use a lightsaber. That's one thing. But this was kind of a very dumb decision on the part of Hera to bring her son into what could have been a huge battle. I mean, she really didn't know what she was going into, and to put her kid at risk like that, it is questionable. So that was probably the one big negative I had coming out of this episode. So now we get to the part that everyone is talking about, the ending. Ahsoka finds herself in the world between worlds and is confronted with what appears to be Anakin Skywalker. I posted my live reaction to this ending on YouTube, and I have the full live reaction to this on Patreon, both linked in the description box down below, and this nearly broke me. I was so happy to see Master and Apprentice reunite. This was a moment I have been waiting to see for years. You have to remember that I'm someone who watched the Clone Wars weekly when it was coming out on Cartoon Network. I watched Ahsoka and Anakin's bond develop over years, and while the duel between Vader and Ahsoka was heartbreaking in Rebels, seeing a redeemed Anakin Skywalker reunite with his apprentice post-Return of the Jedi, this is something that needed to happen, if that's really Anakin. Now, there are a bunch of theories out there that this isn't Anakin. Some are saying it's the son from the Mortis arc of Clone Wars. Some are saying that this is actually Vader, as if he somehow split from Anakin when Anakin died and they became two separate entities. Personally, I do believe that this is Anakin. The reason I think that he doesn't look like a Force ghost is because this is the world between worlds, a realm of the Force, not a physical plane. So because of that, he may not look all ghostly, since they are essentially reuniting within the Force itself. It could turn out, however, that it may not be Anakin, but man, that would be a dick move. And I'm not going to say it's terrible if it's not Anakin. Honestly, it all depends on the context and it all depends on how it's written. But I'm hoping that this is the actual Anakin Skywalker, because fans of the Clone Wars, we need this. We need this reunion. We need Master and Padawan to get their closure and their resolution with one another. We need this to happen, man. So please, God, let this be the real Anakin Skywalker. Alright, in the next episode, I'm expecting most, if not all, of the episode to take place in the world between worlds, and I think that Anakin and Ahsoka are going to be looking at different parts of their lives and seeing how things could have turned out, how things could have been different if they had made different choices. I don't buy all of the talk, all the rumors that Dave Filoni is going to use the world between worlds to retcon the sequel trilogy, even though I would honest to God love that to happen. But I have heard rumors that we may see a what if scenario about what would happen if it was Ahsoka and not Obi-Wan who confronted Anakin on Mustafar, and how that would have changed things. We'll see how it plays out. Anyways, this was the best episode of the show so far, some of the best Star Wars we've gotten in a long time. And I think based on that ending, episode 5 is going to be even better. But be sure to join the Patreon as we go live Tuesday night at 8:45 p.m. Eastern to react to and watch the latest episode of Ahsoka together. The link to that is down below. This upcoming episode is not going to be one to miss. I think this episode is going to be absolutely fantastic. I think it's going to be amazing. I know that Rosario Dawson has come out and said that this is actually the episode she's looking forward to the most. So if Ahsoka says it, it's got to be good, man. It's got to be good. All right. I'll see you guys then for the upcoming 5th episode of Ahsoka. That's on Tuesday night at 8:45 p.m. Eastern. Go check out the Patreon. You guys will find the link there on Tuesday night. And with that being said, thank you guys for watching. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Share the content. And this is JeskerJames with a Z, signing out.